Hey, it's me, that guy you forgot you subscribed to. And after not uploading for so long, except that one time, here's a new thing. I'm gonna ramble about some random manga that the internet or my friends told me to read. Now, I love racism. I want to make that very clear. Now, I love a series brave enough to tackle racism. I want to make that very clear. It's a topic you should approach with a very particular nuance and tact in a serious work. But that being said, I also love a series brave enough to have a demon monster give a speech about how he loves racism because it lets demons easily manipulate humans and eventually eat them. Blaster Knuckle is basically the Black Swordsman arc from Berserk, but set in the Wild West. Our main character, Victor Freeman, hunts down demons because he fucking hates them, and a lot of them are clan members, which is a really killer 2-for-1 deal for Victor. The title comes from Victor's fancy glove that has guns in the knuckles so that when he punches you, he can also shoot the fuck out of you. Unsurprisingly, the action is the real selling point of the series. Victor, whether he's using a gun or punching the shit out of something, because he's also a boxer, because why not? He's just brutal. Anything that gets in his way just does not stand a chance, and even when it seems like he's at the disadvantage, oftentimes it can be totally resolved by him just punching or shooting them more, and it's just great every time. It's such a fun thing to go through, as every different situation seems like just this new insurmountable situation against these demons that God only knows what they do. And this regular guy is able to just brutalize them far worse than what they would have done to him. Of course, the Berserk comparison from earlier is further earned by the parts that are genuinely off-putting, like the instances of children dying, or the massive skeleton dungeon, or, you know, just the normal depictions of how black people used to be treated. Victor, as a character, is in a really interesting but tough position, as the monsters he's killing revert to looking like normal people after they die. So, to the people chasing after him, Victor just looks like this crazed murderer with a rightfully large bounty on his head. And, of course, being a black guy in the late 1800s is not helping him any further.
White woman spotted.
If you're worried that the series might be kind of blunt in the instances when it wants to say something about a concept like race or the inhumanity bred from inequality, then yeah, you should be. What part of Demon Monster Wants to Eat You loves racism did you not hear earlier? The whole series is pretty short. I blew through the whole thing in about 2 hours. And while the ending does give some more context for Victor's backstory and what exactly is going on, it's the kind of ending that's meant more to tell you that Victor is going to keep doing the same thing he's been doing until either he dies or he runs out of monsters to kill. And I mean, hey, not everything needs to span for decades. Some stories get told and that's that. It's pretty short and simple, and it really gets to the point right away. I'd recommend it if you just want some brutal action or just have an afternoon to waste, really. See, black people can be a very controversial topic sometimes, so let's jump to something a little more approachable. Oh, fuck. Mother Sarah is a series by the guy that did Akira. That was all I knew going into it, and I mean, yeah, those look like some Akira guys. It's like Mad Max or Fist of the North Star, but with a strong, independent woman at the helm. And if the internet has taught me anything, it's that strong, independent women are loved and respected by all media consumers. But if you can look past the immense hurdle of your protagonist having a vagina, then you find a series that's very good. The art is really excellent, the characters and backgrounds are always incredibly detailed, and I mean, duh, the Akira guy. The story follows Sarah, a woman looking to find her kids that she lost contact with after a space colony ship they were on crashed back onto Earth. My comparison to Mad Max and North Star earlier was more in terms of the overall aesthetic and tone. It's post-apocalyptic desert and debris all over. Each town deals with some harsh circumstance, whether it be climate, lack of resources, tyranny, or all of the above. So of course the main character will drift in and solve some problem, whether intentionally or not, before she finds a clue about where to go next. Sarah is the only character I really have anything to say about, especially since, go figure, there's not a ton of recurring characters in this story about a drifter, other than the guy that drives her places. But Sarah is definitely a very well-presented character. I was being a shit-ass when I played up the whole strong, independent woman bit, but very genuinely, Sarah is a well-grounded character. She's smart, but not a genius. She's tough, but vulnerable. She's understanding, but not ignorant. The way that she talks with people and tries to understand them and help when she can paints an image of a very caring and compassionate person. Dare I say maternal? I wonder where they got the idea for that character trait. I also like how Sarah's journey is very simple but vague. She's not even sure if her kids are alive, and despite how hopeless that type of journey could feel, Sarah tries to not let that feeling get to her. So by the time she actually finds one of them, you can understand how astounding that must feel for Sarah, who even partially win this global needle in a haystack search. Also, the hay is on fire. To be serious for a moment, I will mention that there are some scenes of self-mutilation and, the bad sex thing. I mention these just because I know that sort of thing can really kill a series for some people, and I don't like the idea of somebody getting blindsided by it. Overall, it's a very thoughtful and tender story hidden beneath the package of a rough and oppressive world dominated by political and social issues, militarism, and economic strife running rampant, and government tyranny being a common problem, all of which being things that someone like Sarah can't just defeat the way that Kenshiro would any random villain. Also, there's this kid with, like, mind control powers during one part. I read 5 volumes in, so I don't know if more just crazy magic nonsense like that comes up, or if Sarah gets any sort of happy ending, but it seems like a series very focused on finding your own hope in the face of whatever you're up against, so I am hoping when I finish it that Sarah can be happy, because man, she's earned it. I'd recommend it if you enjoy this type of setting or style of storytelling where the solution isn't always to just murder everyone, or if you just want some solid art to look at. And now it's time to disrespect women. That's right, I'm going porno mode. Slave of the Magical Capital's elite troops is porn. Well, it's not just outright porn, but within a few chapters it might as well be. So, important context. Earth becomes connected with this demon realm, and now we're fighting off demons. But this realm also has peaches, which when consumed give a person incredible power. Now, when I said a person, what I meant was women. Because, and I shit you not, the literal first page of this story is a congregation of women coming together to abolish the concept of gender equality and legally mandate the subjugation of men. Most of the story is happening in the demon world, where, barring the main character, there aren't any men around, so this doesn't come up a lot. But it sets the stage for you to know from minute 1 that every man in this world is a bottom, whether they like it or not. Anyway, the main character Yuki tumbles into the demon world suddenly, gets chased by some demons, and then gets saved by Kyoka, who has to use her power of enslavement on Yuki to get them out of this predicament. Upon being enslaved, Yuki takes on the form of a powerful monster for Kyoka to ride, and afterwards we find out Kyoka is a leader of her own squadron of anti-demon corps soldiers, and she decides to employ Yuki as the new caretaker for their living space, while also using him when needed in battle. The story widens quite a bit from there and introduces other members of the anti-demon corps, as well as stronger demons, and eventually the Thunder Gods, the current villains of the story. Now, you might have heard all that and been like,
when are we gonna get to the porn factory?
Well, luckily the part I skipped over is that Kyoka's power of enslavement has a very key drawback. Once a given task or battle is finished, she has to provide a reward that is equal to the work done. When she used to enslave demons, that just meant she had to feed them. But now that it's a human, my man wants coochie. And it's not optional. Her body is literally moving on its own to fulfill this requirement. And unsurprisingly, the stakes for this quickly ramp up as Kyoka ends up making out with Yuki, stepping on him, sleeping with him. Half the time, it is just shy of straight-up penetration. And the other half of the time, it is heavily implied penetration. And of course, some characters fall madly in love with Yuki and do very much want to fuck his brains out for a little more reason than he's the protagonist, so of course they want to. A little way into the series, they discover that Kyoka can just straight up loan Yuki to other Demon Corps members, and under their control he'll take on a new form, often with a new ability or specialty. But the trade-off remains, and now that person will also have to reward Yuki. Oh, and don't worry, when they have the literal child do it, she just ends up kissing him on the cheek, and then they go, oh shit, I forgot. Yeah, we're just not going to use that one, okay? I think this is the type of story where it's very clear very quickly if you're gonna vibe with this or not. The story shakes out to effectively just be hijinks, new fight, fight ends, reward porn, go home, and then repeat. At the same time, I don't want that to come off as me acknowledging this as just some degenerate porn nonsense. Like, yeah, those girls are hot, and they do in fact be wearing them military uniforms, but the action bits are still pretty competent and entertaining, and given a decent amount of focus, where it's not like you're just reading 20 pages of porn and then you get 2 pages of a fight. It's pretty equally distributed, despite how I may be making it sound. And getting to see things like different powers clashing between the Anti-Demon Corps members as well as the demons they're fighting is pretty interesting. There are some pretty creative powers, like the girl who gets way stronger, but only when she's asleep. Or the girl who, if she stands with a flag raised, makes exactly one specific person a lot stronger. Even the people with the powers that aren't inherently as interesting usually have very extreme versions of that particular power. Like, the girl who's flying around on the wind is literally shooting tornadoes at people. The girl who can clone herself, it's not your typical, I have clones, but they each get progressively weaker the more I make. No, there's just 30 of her, and they're all really strong. You know, one of the side characters straight up has time stop and a time rewind powers, and she's not even good enough to be the leader of her squad. I'm up to date for this series, and while it's definitely a little trashy in some regards, I do think that it provides a pretty enjoyable balance of arrow and action content, with a storyline that, while not setting the world on fire, it's certainly intriguing enough, and I want to keep following the series on into the future. So if you like military outfit femdom and stand powers from before they got too specific, you might get a kick out of Slave of the Magical Capital's elite troops. Oh, and apparently it's getting an anime adaptation sometime, so, I mean, hey, that's cool. Now I hear some of you, oh, woe is me, Mr. Fiend. I hate all the things you've talked about. Isn't there something for me? Just your average shonen fan who's currently loving every new chapter of Black Clover, and who enjoys every fine consumer product that I purchase? Well, I did read a shonen, but it's probably not the one you're looking for. Siren is a shonen series from 2007 about a young man named Ageha, who, after obtaining a mysterious calling card and taking a very long phone survey, is transported to Siren, a version of Japan in the future that has been devastated by an unknown event. This wasteland is inhabited by monsters seeking to kill anyone that enters Siren, and reaching a designated phone is the only way of escape. Eventually, it's revealed that this will become a recurring death game for a surviving participant until they either die or earn enough points to be allowed to no longer participate. And for your trouble, after your first visit to Siren, you begin to develop psychic powers that can be further developed into a whole variety of abilities. And so, Ageha and friends vow to survive long enough to find out what events led to the destruction of the world and how Siren came to be. Now, to be clear up front about this, I only read 25 chapters of this series, so I met what I'm guessing is the main gang and saw most of their powers on a basic level. And my takeaway was that I did enjoy what I read, but for every cool thing that caught my interest, there'd just be a stretch of things that I didn't think were very interesting, or just seemed kind of whatever to me. It's like setting up a museum and a gas station. The parts that catch your interest are still interesting, but then there's a bag of Funyuns right next to it. To provide an example of what I mean, Ageha's power is shown to be this ball of destruction. It gets hyped up the same way that Vanilla Ice's stand in JoJo does. It just makes things unexist when it touches them. And I think that's super cool. He can't quite control it when he first gets it, so it's just as likely to be a problem as it is a solution. And that's incredibly interesting. But then side character Tough Man Asuga has his power, and he makes the tail of a dragon and just kind of whips it around. And I looked it up, and he can just make a full dragon later, apparently, and that sounds neat enough. But it's not invalid to be totally underwhelmed by an early version of something. You can think Sceptile is cool, but that Trico is a shit-ass. Homo erectus is cringe, but Homo sapien is baller as fuck. There's a bit where they get a lot of things explained to them by a girl named Matsuri, who establishes that she knows all this, because not only has she been to Siren, but that she finished. She did it enough times, and she no longer has to participate. And she made it out fine, and with the benefit of keeping her psychic abilities. I think one of the most interesting things a death game type setting can have is a character who is a former participant. It helps to solidify the idea that the ending isn't just a Staples button that cuts you in half. There is the chance of success and prosperity at the end of these challenges. Meeting her and getting that context is very intriguing to me. But then they have to actually participate in the game and be in the future world of Siren, and I think the future destroyed world is really boring. It's just like desert and blown out buildings and like a bunch of monsters that didn't look or act very interestingly. As that introduction point, it was just kind of very whatever. And, you know, you could look at it and be like, oh, you liked Mother Sarah walking around the desert, and yes, but also that comes with the inherent promise that I know she's going to go somewhere that has other people with something interesting going on, versus whenever they were wandering around in the world of Siren, it's just like, yep, there's the next part of the desert or the next building. And it's not even like they focused on that aspect a ton, it was just very hard not to let that seep into my mind the whole time I was reading it. And I don't want this to come off as criticisms that, like, ruined it for me. I'm by no means saying I disliked what I read. Rather, I just think it's tough not to notice when you think something is cool or interesting, how things nearby aren't as cool or interesting and inherently stand out a bit by comparison. It's just tougher not to notice. And further, I wasn't really particularly taken by the characters or the art or any of the usual things that can help fill those sort of gaps for something that's not quite doing it for you. But if you have any interest in a not as well-known shonen with some interesting ideas, it could be worth a look. Exorcist and Devil-chan is about a guy who's an exorcist and the little devil girl that befriends him. And to put it bluntly, it's the cutest thing I've read in my life. The basic plot is that this young demon girl, later nicknamed Lily, happens to encounter Evan, an experienced exorcist, which is a profession where he kills demons quite often. But upon meeting, Evan is incredibly nice to Lily and invites her into his home for anything she might need, like food or clothing, or even just to keep him company. And over time, we see them develop a very deep bond where Evan treats Lily like his own child, and Lily comes to idolize Evan and develop a crush on him. It's not creepy, I swear. And I guess to address it out front, I can see some concerns that might appear in your mind. One, because a guy named Lollyfiend is recommending this, and also because this setup might sound awfully similar to another thing that got very creepy. And while I guess I can't say for certain, since it's not like this series is over, if it's gonna have an unexpected shift or become creepy at the end, so far, it's very wholesome and stays away from that kind of content. It's got the pacing of a slice-of-life story as we see these characters warm up to each other and learn about one another over small, daily interactions. One of the biggest developments is just them becoming comfortable enough to meet each other's friends, despite the stigma that is natural between humans and demons in their world. Seeing how Lily develops such genuine feelings towards Evan and how she is frequently embarrassed by even the slightest misstep in front of him, only for him to respond in the same calm and cool manner every time, is very genuinely heartwarming. And it's captured very well in the art for the series. There's a simple warmth to a lot of scenes. Little details like Lily's near constant blushing when talking with Evan, or Evan's very tired but caring gaze when he looks at Lily. I would never point to this series as standing out because of its art, but for what the series wants to show, I think the art is perfect. An interesting aspect to the story is the underlying acknowledgement from the characters regarding the absurdity of this relationship and the slight tonal dissonance that comes from it. Evan isn't retired or anything. He is actively going to work every day and fights demons and kills them. He's seen people be killed by them. It's the same thing for Lily. She's seen humans kill demons and demons kill humans. When they first meet, she's terrified that Evan is going to brutally kill her right then and there, and when they involve their friends in meeting each other, there's a distinct concern that the wrong reaction would cause a massive problem. Evan lets Lily meet another exorcist, and Lily lets Evan meet another young demon girl. Both are encounters that could very easily go south and result in someone getting hurt or even killed, and the other being stigmatized even further. They both understand that their respective races contain people that do wrong, and even if they can get along, it's not that simple for everyone else to do. It can sound grander than what it actually is when I'm saying it like this, but I think the story is interwoven fairly well with the central theme of fostering friendship despite inherent differences in a way that feels very natural. It's a constant in their world, but there's plenty of chapters where they aren't worrying about it, so don't think it's excessive. Cute demon girl hanging out with cool guy is the usual MO. I'd really recommend reading it. I think it's an incredibly cute series with some interesting ideas, and assuming it doesn't swerve at some point, it's heading towards many further heartwarming moments. It's also not really a huge series, it's just shy of 50 chapters, and it doesn't update very often because it's not very well known, at least not as far as I've ever seen. But I like to think that if I can make even one person check it out and talk about it, then I've given it some better chance of sticking around, which I really do think it deserves. It's incredibly cute and just really could use some more attention. I appreciate you listening to me ramble about things that I read on predominantly a whim/very vague recommendation. If you have any recommendations yourself, please leave a comment. I am always looking for things to at least glance at. I would like to make this a relatively recurring series, just because I like to talk about things even if I'm not mega into them, and just give an impression, because sometimes that can be fun. Thanks for watching. I'll try to make another one a lot sooner. Rest in peace to the Tanya video. If you saw that, you're a real OG. If you didn't, don't worry, I'll make a cooler version in the future.